Hi friends, I know it's been a minute, but I am back. I'm still a little bit under the weather, so just bear with me as we continue reading Ruthless. Chapter 9, Darcy. Tori's run-in with Max last night was all we could talk about over breakfast. He might have been a total asshole, but that siren song thing was kind of screwed up. And though we may have had his deepest fear in our grip now, we weren't going to stoop to his level and exploit it. Besides, that knowledge that Tori knew his darkest secret was probably enough to torture him psychologically. When the bell rang, I headed to Tara with Tori, Sophia, and Diego, my gut nodding over revisiting Astrom's classroom. The stark reminder of his violent death made my neck prickle as we passed by the patch of ground where he'd been found. It now had been covered with wildflowers by someone with the element of earth, and I suppose that meant the FIB had taken whatever evidence they needed from the area. We soon arrived in Mercury Chambers as we filed down the gloomy staircases to the classroom. Kylie's voice carried to me from behind.
You'd think she'd just shave it off. Every time I see that ugly bald patch, I'm tempted to just do it for her.
I clenched my jaw, determinedly ignoring her and giving Tori a shake of the head. When she flexed her fingers anyway, I gave her a look that said she's not worth it.
Do you think she knows it's even there?
Julian whispered, giggled.
Maybe not, Kylie said loudly. Hey, Darcy, she called, her voice sugary sweet.
I still didn't turn around.
Do you know you're missing a chunk of hair on the back of your head?
Now, settle down. My blood chilled at the sound of Professor Washer's voice, and, as the crowd parted ahead of me, I spotted him in Astrom's place at the center of the tarot room. The large, circular table ringed around him, and though he was thankfully not half-naked like he usually was in our water elemental class, he still made my skin crawl, fully clothed in a white shirt and floral tie. He swept his brown locks out of his eyes, shooting me a lopsided grin as I dropped into my seat. Washer spread his hands on the table before me, lowering his head to speak just to me. Don't worry about your hair. There's still plenty left to run your fingers through. I shuddered as he walked away. Maybe you should shave it off, Tori whispered. I released a laugh and Washer looked back over his shoulder, glancing between us hopefully, as if we'd been checking him out. Unlikely, Professor Pervert. Washer clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. Now, although we are all deeply saddened by losing our exceptional tarot professor, I have taken the role temporarily until the Academy hires a replacement. I am not quite as adept at reading the cards as he was, but I assure you, I know how to use my hands. So, today's lesson we will focus on palmistry. A low current of groans sounded from the few girls who were gifted with the element of water, and I shared the sentiment. Kylie sat up straighter, seemingly unaware of Washer's overly tactile behavior with his students as she tossed him a bright smile. He swept a hand over his hair again, making his shirt right up to reveal the tanned skin beneath. Heave, Tori said under her breath, faking a vomit beside me. I covered my mouth as she continued the act, and Washer's eyes slid onto her. Is everything all right, Miss Vega? He moved towards her, and the brush of his siren gifts tickled me like feathers against my skin. Tori drew away, quickly nodding. I'm fine. Good, he purred deeply, but he didn't leave as he reached out to take her hand. I'll start with a few palmistry demonstrations. Tori grimaced as she let Washer take her hand, and he started painting his fingers across the lines of her skin. Her eyes unfocused a little, and a dreamy smile pulled at her mouth as she stared at him. I wanted to slap the guy for forcing emotions onto my sister. What the hell was wrong with this creep? You have quite the exciting taste in lovers, don't you, Miss Vega? He purred seductively, and a faint frown pulled at Tori's features. Sophia had explained that the most powerful sirens could actually look at your memories, and apparently Washer was strong enough to peek inside Tori's head. I grimaced at him, prodding Tori in the ribs to try to help her snap out of his hold. When he drew away, his eyes fell on me, and I hurriedly dropped down to rummage in my bag, pretending to search for a pen. Your hand, Darcy, Washer encouraged with a devilish note to his tone. Ugh, no. His influence rushed into me, and I felt him stealing away my resistance, replacing it with perfect willing. I stared up at him and I held up my hand, and lust dripped through my body, tugging at everything inside me. How could I have thought he was so disgusting just a moment ago? His face was so rugged, his hands so smooth, and his skin such a perfect golden hue. Your love line tells me there's a forbidden romance in your future, he whispered, his finger circling on a small break in the line of my palm. A stormy sea's coming, Miss Vega, but will you ride it well? I sighed softly, but something tickled in the back of my mind. He's a siren and a lecherous pig. I shoved back against his influence with all my might, channeling power into my veins, and the strength of his hold started to recede. He chuckled, stepping away. Who's next? Diego folded his arms, glaring at Washer with a stay-away expression, but it didn't matter. Washer only had eyes for the muscular guy beside him, leaning in with a predatory grin. God, I whispered to Tori, how does he get away with it? I heard he gets a lot of sway because of his order, Sophia breathed, leaning around Tori to speak to all of us. He's allowed to use his powers on us because he needs emotion to regenerate. I guess so. As he doesn't actually fuck a student, then, I guess it's alright then, Tori said, sardonically pursing her lips. I'd rather cut off a nose than lay a hand on him, or any other teacher at this school for that matter. Even Orion? I blurted out before I could stop myself. Tori looked at me, her eyes widening in surprise. Yeah, especially Ryan, Darcy. Are you serious? He's just got that, brooding thing going on. You mean the holier-than-thou assholelessness factor? She asked. That's the one. I wouldn't actually go there, obviously. I blew out a laugh, turning to look at the notes on my atlas to try to hide the blush. Teachers wouldn't dare lay a hand on students, really, Sophia said quietly. I read the rulebook when I arrived here. Of course you did, Diego chided, and she threw him a mischievous grin before going on. Any teacher who crossed that line wouldn't just be fired. They'd be power-shamed by the Celestial Council, stripped of their rank in front of the whole of Solaria. Can you imagine? She shuddered, and genuine goosebumps raised on her arms. Maybe I can. I don't think we could sink much lower, I said with half a shrug. Sophia shook her head seriously. No, Darcy, it's worse than you think. The whole Fae world would turn their back on you. I'm kind of with Darcy here, Tori piped up. That sounds very familiar already. Sophia shook her head again. Trust me. If you were power-shamed, you wouldn't have a place in the school. You would have to work your way up from the very bottom to try to earn respect from even the weakest of Fae. So, Washer called out to the room, stepping back to the center of the round desk. I want you all to pair up, use the notes on your atlas to do a palm reading of each other's lifelines. If you discover you are doomed to die tomorrow, please take your wailing to the hallway where I will come and comfort you. I turned to Tori, finding the same disgusted expression on her face. I would rather die tomorrow than be comforted by Washer in the hallway, I whispered to Tori, releasing a bark of laughter that made Washer look our way hopefully again. We pointedly ignored him. Tori took my hand, starting to follow the line curving to the top of my palm. While she worked, my eyes drifted across the room to the large mural on the opposite wall. The zodiac constellations were painted beautifully in splashes of silver with swirling names marking each one. Pisces, Aries, Libra, Leo, Capricorn, Taurus. Straight lines linking each star highlighted the shapes as they created between them. Whoever had done the mural was incredibly skilled, and I wondered vaguely if Aestrom had painted it himself. At that thought, my heart weighed heavier in my chest, and I looked to Tori with a frown. Do you think we'll ever work out what Aestrom wanted us to know? She kept her eyes on my palm, but her brow furrowed deeply as she considered my words. Probably not. Tori, I said, and she looked up with a teasing grin. Maybe I should show the card to Orion. He might know what it means. Tori considered that a moment, then nodded. I don't trust him exactly, but after he saved my ass from the heirs, I've warmed up to him by 1%. Okay, I'll do it. We studied the lifelines a while longer, and it seemed like Tori and I didn't have much to worry about in that department. Although we had a worrying amount of potential deaths, which Washer pointed out could occur at any moment in time. Good to know. Now, let's mix things up, Washer said keenly. You will repair and then interpret your love lines. He started directing people towards different seats, and my heart sank dramatically when he paired me with Kylie. Perfect. I grabbed my things, moving over to sit in Julian's vacated chair as she headed over to take mine next to Tori. Kylie leaned away from me like I carried rabies, her upper lip curling back. Her hand shot into the air as she turned to Washer. Sir, I'd like to repair with someone who isn't trying to steal my boyfriend's throne. No, do be civil, my dear. He looked between us. You make a lovely pair. My insides churned as he surveyed us too long, and I sensed Kylie recoiling from him. Total creep, I whispered when he moved away, hoping to at least make it through the class without this becoming completely unbearable. She stared at me for a moment, and with a tight pout in place, she finally nodded. Yeah, you got that right. She snatched my hand, turning it over, and studied the love line, her nails pinching my skin. The silence between us became so uncomfortable, I simply had to break it. So, you're a Medusa? And? She went on the defense, and I sighed, giving up on this already. And I've never seen a girl sprout snakes out of her head, that's all. Well, I bet you wish you could, so that you could cover up that ghastly bald spot, she said promptly, and I scowled darkly, pulling my hand out of her claws. Why do you hate me so much? I shouted, furious that she continued to treat me this way. Wasn't it enough that I had had my hair sheared off by her heartless boyfriend, and she damn well filmed the whole thing? You're a threat to Sethi's throne, she said, her eyes flashing and her shoulders squaring. I don't want his throne, I said for what felt like the 1,000th time since I arrived in Solaria. Swap hands, Washer called out, and I took Kylie's hand. She reluctantly uncurled her fingers to let me see her palm, but I couldn't concentrate to try and do a reading. I thought Fae fought their own fights, I said, staring determinedly at her hand as angry energy burned through my veins. I am fighting my own fight. I'm fighting to keep his eyes off of you, she blurted, then froze as if she hadn't meant to say it. I looked up at her, shocked she would still think Seth gave a damn about me, or that he ever had. He pretended to like me. He cut my hair off and you recorded it. How can you possibly think that I'm a threat to you? She blinked heavily for a moment. I thought she was going to cry. Because you're beautiful, and every time you're in a room he stares at you, and when you're not there, he can't stop looking at that disgusting bracelet of hair he made. He wants you to bow to him, but given half the chance, he'd have it both ways and have you under his arm too, she said, nearly all of it through her teeth, and turned bright red as she did so. Tears splashed down her cheeks, and I was left in complete and utter shock as she sprang up from her seat and ran from the room. I suddenly noticed how close Washer was standing and felt his power radiating through the air. He'd fed on her pain, her sadness, and drawn it all out for me to hear and him to feast on. Was everyone in the school just hunting for their next goddamn piece of meat? He hounded after her toward the door, and it only took half a second longer for Julian to sprint after them, calling her name. My mind reeled from what she'd said, and what I had to conclude that she was completely deluded. Ha! Posted. Kelly's gonna flip. Tyler started laughing as he finished posting something on Facebook. A telltale ping told me I'd been tagged, and I took a deep breath in to ready myself for an impending earthquake as I tapped on the notification on my screen. Tyler Corbin,
Just witnessed a major meltdown after Washer sucked out 2 truths and a lie from Kylie Major's mouth. Truth, Darcy Vega makes Seth Capella drool. Truth, we've seen him sniff the bracelet. No one blames you, bro. Lie, he wouldn't actually have a Vega twin under his arm, but he might take one under his sheets once or twice. Hashtag major fail. Hashtag sucked by a siren. Hashtag major envy. Asshole, I breathed as laughter rang out around the classroom. I looked up to find Tyler smirking at me while pretending to casually massage out a kink in his shoulder. Fury crashed through my chest in a wave. Seth Capella does not... Ding! I glanced down at my screen, discovering that Seth had replied to Tyler's post. And that was saying something, as the heirs rarely replied to anyone's posts. Seth Capella. Fun game. Let's flip it around and play 2 lies and 1 truth. At Tyler Corbin. Your mom was the best lie of my life. Your dad was a second. Your face is going through a brick wall the next time I see you. Hint. Both of your parents suck in bed. My heart pounded out of tune as I sensed anger behind his words. Tyler turned white as a sheet as he placed his atlas down on the desk and stared at it without blinking. When class was finally dismissed, I was more than glad to make my escape from the room and head back to Air Tower. The day was finally over, and I fully intended on doing nothing but lazing around in my room all evening with my friends and practicing some elemental magic. As we walked along the circular path around the orb, a notification pinged on my atlas. I was half tempted to ignore it. Sure, it would be nothing but another Fae book post designed to ruin my day. But curiosity got the better of me, and I took it out, finding an official message waiting for me. Your liaison has been rescheduled for 7 p.m. tonight with Professor Orion. A small smile crept onto my face, and I hid it quickly before the others could see, rearranging my features into disappointment. Looks like I can't hang out after all tonight. Orion's rescheduled my liaison. You can show him the card, Tori reminded me. Maybe he'll know something. Are you sure that's a good idea? Diego asked uncertainly. He's helped them before, Sophia said. Besides, the worst he could do is dismiss it, and then you're in the same position anyway. I suppose that's true, Diego said with a shrug, shifting toward Sophia and wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, turning a pastel shade of pink as he ruffled her hair. The 2 of them hadn't officially defined things since the formal, and I wondered if Diego was ever going to pluck up the courage to officially ask her out. Tori looped around them to my side, rolling her eyes at their backs. The sun was already low on the horizon and bathing the campus in a dim amber hue. My horoscope had said today was going to be the start of a deep, undying love, and I had the feeling it meant my love for the academy. It might have been filled with cutthroat fae and had danger lurking around every corner, but it also had the most wonderful, spellbinding place I'd ever been, and it was starting to feel like home. 7 p.m., and Orion was predictably late. I'd even dragged my heels on the way to his office to account for it, but he still hadn't arrived. I sighed, on the verge of giving up another few minutes as another few minutes ticked by. The hole I'd cut through his door was now fixed, and I wondered if the desk was intact too. I wasn't looking forward to my Saturday detention this weekend. Whatever way Orion disciplined his students, I imagined it was no fun at all. Didn't he once say corporeal punishment is totally legal here? Holy shit, I hope it's not that. It was almost 7:30 when I gave up, heading back through the corridors of Jupiter Hall with a frown etched into my features. Astrom's card was burning a hole in my pocket, and I so longed to ask Orion about it, among other things. And okay, I'd been 0.5% eager to see him. I didn't know what it was that drew me to him. He was, obviously good looking, like a slap you in the face hot. He was also a major, mega asshole most of the time. But those 2 things tended to be a dangerous combination, and I was definitely a sucker for it. I headed out of the building, following the curving pathway around the orb, the fresh night air brushing against my skin. I wandered
along, soaking in the quiet as I wondered whether the others would still be hanging out in Diego's room like they had been when I left.
Look who it isn't.
Seth's voice hit my ears. My blood ran cold as I spotted him with Kylie and a group of his wolf pack, standing under the light of a lantern. On the floor between them was Tyler Corbin with a bloody face, his nose skewed to one side and his hand raised as he tried to hold off the junior who was cupping flames in his hand. I halted in my tracks, feeling like a deer in headlights as they spread out across the pathway to stop me from advancing. Seth moved to the front of the group with a smirk wrapped around his beautiful features. It isn't the Queen of Solaria. It isn't the object of my affections. And it isn't the girl with blue hair. Kylie puffed up her chest at his words, and I scowled, my eyes falling on Tyler. He might have brought this on himself, but I still pitied him. He was a warthog about to be ripped apart in a pack of lions. Leave him alone, I told Seth, my hands beginning to shake as fear took a violent hold of me.
He got what he asked for, Seth snarled. Just like you did, Vega. His eyes were two frozen lakes, and I fought the urge to back up as he took another step towards me.
Hey, wolves, he called to his pack, jerking his head to beckon them. Kylie stepped aside to let them pass, and the group closed in around Seth, nuzzling his arms, his neck. He smiled hungrily at me, pawing at the back of his friends.
Who wants to go hunting? Fear raced through me as the wolves started howling to the sky, cupping their hands around their mouths. Seth stalked forward in an act of fury. I raised my hands and drew magic into my palms. Fire flickered, and I threw all of my energy into it, casting it out of me in a ferocious wave. It tumbled out of control, a huge flame bursting towards them as if it was fueled by gasoline. Seth threw up his arms, and a glimmering air shield arched around him and his friends, dissolving the fire as it touched it. I lost sight of them all behind a sheet of smoke, my pounding heart crashing against my rib cage. A piercing howl tore through the air, and Seth's huge white form burst out of the haze, making me scream in alarm. I fled. It was the only logical thing to do. I wasn't trained. I couldn't fight so many at once. But could I outpace a damn werewolf? No chance. I veered sharply right, and the snap of jaws sounding dangerously close to my ear. I sprinted towards the nearest building, half falling into Venus Library and running down the first aisle. The doors banged open behind me, and I cursed as a sound of heavy paws bounded through the cavernous room. "Mr. Capella!" the librarian shrieked. "Take your games outside. There are ancient texts in here that do not need your drool all over them. If you're looking for the Vega girl, she went that way, but please continue your hunt in Fey form." I mentally called the librarian a million names under the sun as I hurried to the back of the library. "Continue your hunt? You bitch." An emergency exit glowed up ahead, and hope beamed inside me as I ran towards it, pushing the bar. An alarm bell rang out, and panic tore through me as howls cut into the air, shredding it. "In Fey form," the librarian begged, but the rush of paws was all I needed to hear to know that they weren't obeying. I ran onto the grass, turning left, tearing down along into the shadows, half blind as I raced for cover of the next building. I trailed my hands along the back wall of Mars Laboratories, desperately searching for a way in. "Ooh, get her, Sethi!" Kylie's voice sailed after me, followed by her laughter, and I had the feeling she was riding one of the wolves. My hands scraped nothing but stone, and I picked up my pace again, though every second I wasted brought me closer to being caught. Come on.
There must be a way in. Please, please. I wasn't fast enough, and there was no way in, nowhere to run. A hand shot out of nowhere and dragged me through a door just up ahead of me. I was plunged into absolute darkness, and a scream bit at my throat just before a palm slammed down over my mouth and I was dragged against a hard body as the door clicked quietly closed, my back to their front. The scent of cinnamon stoked a fire in my soul as I stiffened as I realized who had come to my aid. Absolutely silent, he breathed in my ear, and I nodded against his hand. Look over there. Kylie's voice was muffled beyond the door, and my mouth dried up. I recoiled against Orion, barely breathing as I waited for that door to be found, for the wolves to tear me from his arms and rip me apart. Professor or not, he surely couldn't take on a whole wolf pack if they were determined to sink their teeth into me. The sound of heavy paws padded loudly beyond the building, and my pulse quickened. It thrashed so loudly, I feared they'd hear it. Orion probably could with his enhanced senses, but the wolves hadn't found me yet, so that had to be a good thing. My skin prickled with heat where the press of his chest and his stomach met my back. I shut my eyes, willing my thoughts into what I was hiding and nothing else. She's not here, Kylie sighed in frustration. Try down near Jupiter Hall. The sound of the pack headed away, and my breath fell out of my lungs in a shuddering wave as Orion removed his palm from my mouth. The muscles in my legs twitched as I prepared to move, but Orion's hand suddenly sailed around my waist and stopped me from leaving. My heart beat to a forbidden tune, and I stilled entirely, frozen in place. We were flush to each other, and I only realized how intimate this was now that I was no longer in fear for my life. Yet, I didn't try to move again. And he didn't either. I wasn't sure if I was holding the breath, or if the air was simply stuck in my lungs and refusing to come out. The most rational reason for him holding on to me was that he was about to bite me. He'd saved me from facing an air, so I guess I owed him. The other reason, though... Oh, holy shit, the other reason? His fingers found the skin between my shirt and waistband, and heat weaved a frantic whirlpool through my stomach, pushing lower into the deepest regions of my body. So against the rules. Must move, but I want to stay. I felt his breath in my hair, the heat, the desire. My instincts told me he wanted me, but that was pure insanity. I just couldn't come up with any better reasoning, though. He made my thoughts hazy and my morals fray. He was my teacher. And I knew he'd lose his job if anyone saw us like this. Maybe more. Maybe I would lose my place at Zodiac Academy too. Move, Darcy, move! I turned around, finding my resolve, but his arm remained in place. So it lay on my back instead. His fingers curled into a ball, keeping me close but not letting me escape. It was dark, but a slit of light was cast from a door further down the hall just to our left. Just enough to see by. If I look up at him, I think I'll burst apart into a million heated fragments. But if I don't, I'll never see the answer to the question in his eyes. I forced my gaze up to his and felt the spell break, dashed into pieces on the hard look in his eyes. His face morphed into something stony, distant. His throat bobbed, and he pushed me firmly back. They're gone, so move, he growled, sending a jolt through me at the sudden loudness. I backed up, staring at him as my anger began to grow. I hadn't done anything. He was the one who wrapped his damn arms around me. You definitely ground your ass against him. All right, maybe for 1 single second, but that was it. Sir, don't you dare talk back to me, he snarled, shoving the door open. Move! I
I scampered out onto the grass, furious with myself and with him. With this stupid academy, with Seth for driving me in here like a fox chased by hounds. Tears burnt my throat, my eyes, but there was no way they were going to fall. Not until I was locked up in my room without even the chance of anyone seeing them. And even then, I knew it would be better if I just swallowed them down, never letting another tear fall out until one day I choked on them all. A siren would have a field day with me now if they found me, sucking up all this emotion coursing through me. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" Orion snapped, and my spine straightened as I glanced over my shoulder at him, where he stood in the doorway. He wore a shirt and smart trousers, but his hair was suspiciously damp, speaking of a recent shower. I raised my hands, giving him a stumped expression, completely baffled by his question. "We have a liaison session to complete." "Which you didn't show up for," I pointed out, incredulous that he was suddenly acting like I was a misbehaving student. He definitely initiated that ass-to-crotch hug. What a jerk. "Pitball practice ran over. Besides, I'm here now, aren't I? That counts as showing up." He turned his back on me, heading across the grass in the direction of Jupiter Hall, as if he expected me to follow. "That doesn't count. And what were you doing lurking around the back of Mars Laboratories anyway?" He glanced back over his shoulder, cocking an eyebrow at my tone. My heart stuttered, but the berating I was expecting didn't come. "I wasn't lurking, Miss Vega. I came to check out the commotion. Now, if you're done questioning me, let's move." I remained in place, both furious and flustered by his crazy mood swings. "I'm not coming," I hissed, knowing he'd hear me no matter how quietly I said it. I turned in the opposite direction, folding my arms as I marched towards the path, wanting to go back to my room before Seth showed up again. A blur in my periphery alerted me 1 second too late before Orion swept me off my feet and tossed me over his shoulder. I yelled in alarm, smashing my hands into his back on instinct. "Let me down! Are you insane?" I kinda hoped another teacher would hear, but as he marched me onto the pathway under the full light of the lamps, I sensed he didn't have any worries about being seen. But surely this was against the rules. "Professor Orion, put me down this second," I demanded, my cheeks flaming. At least I'd had the foresight to put some damn jeans on in place of my school skirt, or this would have been 100 times more embarrassing right now. "Good evening, Professor. Having little trouble with a student?" Principal Nova's voice carried from up ahead, and my mouth fell open in disbelief. "Nothing to worry about, just Miss Vega skipping liaison." "Well, I'm glad to see you rounded her up," Nova tutted, passing us without even a second glance. I gasped in horror, and Orion released a low laugh. "I'll walk, all right? Just put me down," I ordered. He didn't say another word until we stepped into his office a couple of minutes later and dropped me onto the seat in front of his desk. I flattened the choppy ends of my hair, which were now sticking up all over the place, shaken to my core. Orion yawned, lowering into his winged back chair on the other side of the desk and casually taking out his bourbon and pouring himself a glass. I laced my fingers together, staring at him with a mixture of rage, frustration, and absolute embarrassment. I wanted to demand he tell me what the hell he was playing at by running his hands all over me 5 minutes ago, then turning on me like an enemy soldier. But my lips simply wouldn't part. My vocal cords were on lockdown, so I just stared, waiting for an explanation that I probably wasn't going to get. Orion sighed contentedly as he drank most of the measure he'd poured, then planted the glass down on his desk. "I think it's best we talk about the nymph situation in Solaria. You were pulled out of class before the end of my lesson the other day, so I'll catch you up." I narrowed my eyes, wondering if maybe he had some sort of personality disorder he wasn't aware of. He'd gone from volcanic hot to glacial cold in the space of 5 seconds, and apparently he had forgotten all about it. "Sir," I started,
unsure how to phrase this in a way that was actually going to get a response. "Miss Vega," he asked, his expression totally innocent, as if he had no idea what I was going to say. I changed the tact at last second, realizing I had another way to approach this. I thought Fae weren't supposed to intervene in other people's fights. He scratched his beard, then shrugged. "That was a wolf pack. It's different." "Is it?" I narrowed my eyes. At least he answered. "It's my duty to protect you as your professor," he said, "professor," extra loudly, like that was supposed to make a point. He pushed up his sleeve and his brow wrinkled as he scratched the red tattoo of the Leo sign there. "So nymphs," he said firmly, and I sensed that was the end of my line of inquiries. I sighed, resigning as I sat back in my seat. Maybe there had been some unbidden connection between us for a moment, but rules were rules, and apparently now he was abiding by them. "Everyone needs to be vigilant on campus. You shouldn't travel around alone. If a nymph were to absorb the magic of a powerful fae like you, it could be disastrous for all of Solaria." Dread inched into my gut. "Surely there's something you can do? Can't you stop them from getting on campus?" "Obviously, we have protection spells in place. But how the nymphs got in is still a mystery to the FIB, which means we can't be sure it won't strike again." A beat of fear rolled down my spine, and I nodded. "So, you and your sister will have to walk around campus with at least one other student from now on, especially after dark. Understand?" "Sure," I agreed, more than happy to comply. I didn't want to be caught off guard by a nymph showing up. The idea was terrifying. He drained the last of his bourbon and checked his watch. "Well, that's the end of this session." "Are you kidding me?" I breathed. "It's 8 o'clock, he said with a shrug, rising to his feet. "No, wait!" I got up too, reaching into my pocket and pulling out Astrom's tarot card. He frowned as I placed it down on his desk, and my heart thundered as I pushed it towards him. Astrom gave this to me, and Tori, and I wondered maybe if you might know what it means. He said you never really saw eye to eye, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong? Orion's lips pressed into sharp lines as he fished the card from the desk, examining it. "Astrom never really thought of much of me and my family," he muttered, mostly to himself. "Why was that?" I asked gently, as his eyes remained fixed on the message inscribed on the card. "He taught me when I was at Zodiac. He was a royalist, and I was outwardly against them, and he hated me because of my own beliefs, among other things." "Oh," I whispered, nodding. Orion looked up from the card, seemingly dragged out of a daze. He frowned in a way that told me some deep hurt was concealed beneath all of those hard layers he hid behind. He stepped around the desk, holding the card out to me. "I don't know what this means, and I highly doubt I'm the man he would have wanted you to seek answers from." He remained close to me as I reached for the card and pulled it from his fingers. "What aren't you saying?" I asked, sure he was holding back on something. A tightness grew in my chest, like his mere presence was capable of sucking the air from my lungs. He leaned in close, his breath a delicious cocktail of bourbon and danger. "There are many things I'm not saying, and for good reason. But I'll tell you this. I've spent most of my life hating the Savage King and anyone associated with him too, including you and your sister, when you first came here." His eyes flickered with shadows that threatened to tear me apart. "But I learned a long time ago that blood doesn't define a person, so I shouldn't have judged you so quickly. You're unlucky to bear the title that you do, and I would never bow to either of you for many reasons, but you aren't bad people. That being said..." His eyes traveled down me, the sensation of a zip opening along the line he cast with his eyes. "I will do whatever it takes to ensure Darius and the other heirs sit on the throne of Solaria, and I urge you to never underestimate that vow." Chapter 10. Tori. I sat in the Ignis common room with Sophia on Thursday evening, practicing my defense against coercion with varying degrees of effectiveness. I'd basically mastered the art of maintaining a mental shield against attacks while I was concentrating on it, but if I wasn't distracted, she was able to slip commands past my defenses. At least she was kind to me, only demanding I draw a line on my arm each time she coerced me. So far, I had 9 lines marking my forearm, 1 for each time she'd gotten past my guard. I was trying to keep her commands out while creating ice cubes with water magic at the same time, and concentrating on the 2 tasks was frustratingly difficult. I swirled the ice around the glass I was using to contain them, releasing a breath as I tried to focus again. Sophia was trying not to smirk at me, and failing. I knew she got a kick out of it every time she got past my defenses, but I wouldn't begrudge her of her fun. Besides, I needed the help, and at least she wasn't making me dance on the table to strip for everyone. The doors opened, and I looked around as a group of 6 FIB agents dressed in black filed into the room alongside Professor Orion. "Everyone shut up!" he yelled, bringing the room into silence. "As a part of the investigation into Professor Astrom's murder and the fire in Darius A. Crux's room, the FIB will be carrying out searches of everyone's dorms. This is not optional. I do not want to hear any whining. You will be docked 10 house points for every complaint that reaches my ears, and I have exceptional hearing. None of you are to return to your rooms from this point on until they have been searched. You will remain here in the common room until further notice. Questions?" Marguerite got to her feet. "Sir, I don't understand. Why am I being treated like a..." Orion cast a gust of wind at her that sent her flying over the back of a couch she'd risen from and crashing onto her ass on the far side of it. A smattering of laughter broke out as she shrieked in surprise. "Good, no questions then. The agents need to conduct a final check of Mr. A. Crux's room, and then the searches will begin." Orion motioned for the agents to head for the stairs, and my mind began to whirl with panic. My heart was thundering an unsteady rhythm in my chest. My palms were slick, and a little voice in the back of my head was very unhelpfully screaming, "No, no, 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 no." If they searched my room, they'd definitely find those coins and the dagger. There was no way I could explain having either of which didn't involve me getting called out for getting Darius's room set on fire. And death by supremely pissed off dragon asshole was not what I envisioned for my evening. Hell no. I needed a plan and fast. "I think we need to try something a bit more motivating," I announced to Sophia, looking away from Orion and the 2 agents who were standing in the room as if they didn't interest me in the slightest. "Oh? Yeah, why don't you coerce me to drench myself with freezing cold water, and I'll see if I can fight it off." "Are you sure?" she asked hesitantly, but I could tell she was a little tempted to try. "Why not?" I said with bravado-filled grin, which probably covered my panic. Hopefully. "What harm can a little water do anyway?" Sophia frowned, clearly thinking of what the airs had done to me the other night, but I smiled encouragingly until she relented. "Okay then. Drench yourself with freezing cold water." Her command slid over me, and I made no attempt to shield myself from it. My arms instantly lifted into the air, and I conjured a torrent of water to slam down over my head. I leapt up with a shriek as the icy kiss of water, and my teeth began to chatter at once. Every head in the room turned my way, and I stumbled away from the table we'd been working at as Sophia started babbling apologies. I waved her off, muttering that it was my own fault. Now for some Class A acting skills. "Holy shit, that's so cold!" I exclaimed. "Miss Vega, what the hell is going on over there?" Orion demanded. I headed straight toward him without hesitation, shivering as the icy water plastered my uniform to my body. The white shirt had turned transparent, and a puddle was forming beneath me. Sir, can I please go and get changed?" I asked, giving him an imploring look.
You command the element of fire. I'm sure you can dry yourself out, he said flatly. Damn. I nodded slowly. This was about to get a lot more embarrassing, but needs must. I called on my fire at magic and let it heat my skin until the water began to steam out of my uniform. Orion offered me a hard smile that seemed to say, see, as I smiled back before ramping up the power I was exerting. My shirt burst alight first, and I shrieked as my long socks followed suit. I held up enough control over the flames to stop them from burning me, but I screamed like I didn't. Oh, for the love of the moon, Orion exclaimed before dousing me in water again with his own magic. I gasped, and my heart lurched with terror for a moment as I found myself at the mercy of someone else's water magic again. But Orion stopped the torrent as quickly as it had begun. A hole had burned right through the front of my shirt, and at the hem of my skirt was a kind of blackened glob of synthetic goo. Maybe you should just let her get changed, muttered the agent closest to me. He offered me a friendly smile, and I returned it, simpering just a little. Damn, I was a good actress when I had to be. Fine, Orion snapped, clearly not falling for my damsel in distress act quite so keenly as the agent. Lead the way, Miss Vega. He motioned for me to go ahead, and I scurried in front of him, leading to my room. I pretended to fumble with the key as we arrived, dropping it to the floor and apologizing as Orion sighed impatiently. I need to assist with the search. Get a move on now. Right, sorry. I managed to unlock the door and headed in, unhooking my remaining shirt buttons as I went. Orion moved to follow me inside, and I raised an eyebrow at him. Are you coming in here while I get changed, sir? I asked. My shirt was already unbuttoned, and I'm guessing him seeing any more of me would be a pretty bad look for a teacher. He narrowed his eyes at me as he stepped back out of my personal space. Hurry up, he demanded before closing the door between us. I ran across the room and lifted my mattress to reveal the coins and dagger I'd taken from Darius's room. I quickly snagged a black sock out of the drawer beside my bed and shoved them all inside it before moving to the window and throwing it open. I took a deep breath, focused all of my attention onto my magic as I pulled it to the surface of my skin. I called on the power of air and tossed the sock out of the window, catching it on a breeze and guiding it down to the ground outside of Ignis' house. Next, I drew on the power of earth, aiming all of my attention into the ground around the black sock as I begged everything and anything around it to grow. The brown grass which grew throughout the fire territory thickened and grew taller to hide my stash, and my thundering heart quieted a little as the sock and its contents were hidden. As quickly as I could, I wrenched my ruined uniform off of me and changed into a pair of yoga pants and a gray sweater. What's taking so long? Orion demanded from outside, and I jammed my feet in my sneakers. Just coming, I called back. My gaze caught on the black jacket, which still hung on the back of my door from the other night, and I grinned as I snatched it into my grasp. The door opened, and I came face to face with a rather angry-looking Orion. I was just getting this, I explained, holding his jacket out for him. He frowned at it for a moment, clearly remembering draping it around me as he pulled me from the pool the other night. So, thanks, I guess, I added, stepping into the corridor and closing my door again. Orion took the jacket from me, raising an eyebrow at my tone. You guess? Well, you dragged me out of the water and all, so I'm grateful for that. But you did only give those assholes a few weeks of detention for attempted murder, so I'm not exactly falling over myself with gratitude for you. It's kind of obvious where your loyalties lie. I shrugged as I turned away from him, but he moved with his vampire speed and caught my wrist to stop me. You and your sister don't have a lot of friends around here. Maybe you should think a little about your attitude if you're wondering why that might be, he warned. I stepped closer to him, smiling sweetly. Thanks for the advice, Professor. But we've never needed anyone else to look out for us before, so I'm not going to start expecting it now. I pulled out of his grip and then turned away. He let me go, but I could tell he was half tempted to say something else. I kept going until I made it back to the common room, concentrating on breathing normally and slowing my heart rate. The last thing I needed was Professor Grouchy Vampire catching on to me before I could retrieve that stash. The other agents
to return from their latest inspection of Darius's destroyed room, and the whole group of them, including Orion, headed upstairs to start searching dorms. Sophia began working on a cardinal magic assignment, and I feigned interest in it as I let the seconds tick by. I scrolled through my Facebook feed, smirking as I noticed a few posts mentioning Caleb Altair's secret Pegasus fetish. Our other plans against him were starting to take shape. Sophia had spread that little rumor among the Pegasus herd, and we'd all been stoking the flames of it through the ass whenever the opportunity arose. Once 15 minutes had passed, I got to my feet. I just realized I have a parcel waiting for me in Pluto's office, I said casually. I might as well go grab it while I think of it. You want me to walk with you? Sophia offered, and I could tell she was a little worried about me wandering around the campus alone after what the heirs had done to me the other night. I'll be fine, I said, waving her back down to her seat. What's the worst they can do to me anyway? Sophia looked at me like she was about to start listing, and I shrugged as I headed for the exit. As soon as I was out of sight, I practically sprinted for the door that led out of the fire territory, forcing myself to slow my pace once I was outside again. I skirted Ignis' house as casually as I could, wandering off the path to the area of land around the back of the building that my window overlooked. I hesitated, leaning my back against the cool glass wall of Ignis' house, as I looked towards the spot where my stolen goods were hidden. Every nerve in my body was begging for me to race and snatch it, but I refused to obey. I'd been in too many tight situations to let my nerves get the better of me. I needed to be sure I hadn't been followed. I needed to know no one was watching me. I pulled my atlas out of my satchel and started scrolling through Facebook posts like I didn't have a care in the world. I gave it a few minutes and was about to give up and move to retrieve my loot when a prickle traveled down my spine. Suddenly, I had the very real belief that someone was watching me. I resisted the urge to look around for the source of my discomfort and continued to scroll through the Facebook feed. There wasn't much to catch my interest today. A few bits of gossip about an Earth student who'd been cheating on her girlfriend. Some conspiracy theories about Astrom's death. I noticed a group dedicated to finding a way to cheer up Darius after the fire in his room. It looked like they were going to throw him a party, and quite possibly offer him an orgy too by the looks of it. I scoffed in disgust. I guessed I couldn't have expected to have ruined his fun for long, but at least I could look back at that photo of him literally bursting with anger anytime I wanted to. A harsh wind gusted down on me, and I flinched in surprise as my hair was blown back and the light of the moon was blotted out for a moment. My heart leapt in panic as I spotted the golden dragon diving from the sky towards me, and I pressed my back against the wall of Ignis' house, almost dropping my atlas in fright. I fought to keep my features as neutral as possible as Darius landed in front of me, the ground juddering beneath his weight. A deep growl emanated from his throat, and he swiveled his reptilian head so that one huge golden eye could survey me. I swallowed thickly, looking over his enormous body in awe. He towered over me, forcing me to tilt my head right back up to look at him. I couldn't help but appreciate the beauty of this beast, the way the moonlight glimmered on his scales, and his eyes flashed with untamed power. He spat something from his mouth, and I glanced at the wad of material as his body retreated back into Fae form. Oh, for the love of crap, I swore as he stood before me butt naked. Again. You could have at least, landed anywhere you liked. Why did you have to flash your goods at me? Darius smirked at me as he prowled closer, apparently not the least bit embarrassed by his body being on show. Not that he should have been. He had sculpted muscles and broad shoulders that just screamed, "Touch me." His skin was tanned and kissed by his tattoos, and just looking at him had heat rising across my body. Bad Tori. Don't look at the jackass like that. He might look good enough to eat, but he'd sure as shit give you indigestion. Why are you hanging out around here? He asked as he stooped to gather the clothes he dropped. He stepped into his sweatpants while keeping his gaze fixed on me. Well, I was enjoying some time away from the assholes, but we can officially count that being over. Darius shrugged his t-shirt on, covering up that beautiful body and allowing me the clarity of mind to look away from him. It kind of looks like you were reading about me, he countered, pointing at my atlas, which was hanging loosely in my hand. I glanced at the screen and spotted a picture of him, which had been posted by the girls organizing his party. It looked like a posed shot for a photo shoot. He was gazing wistfully off a bridge without a shirt on. Oh yeah, you caught me. Secret fangirl right here. I just love to stand about staring at photos of you, daydreaming about your oh-so-dreamy body. And I'm just imagining what it would be like if you had a halfway decent personality. Zero truth to any of those comments. Darius actually quirked a smile at that, and my bottom jaw practically hit my sneakers, or at least it would have, if I hadn't perfected the art of resting bitch face and struck it into place with a super glue at the start of his interaction. He glanced up at the sky and held a hand out like he was checking for rain. Well, don't hang around out here too long, Roxy, he said, using that irritating as hell nickname for me. We wouldn't want you to come close to drowning again. I scowled at him as he strode away towards the house, my heart skipping a beat as he moved past the clump of scraggly grass which concealed the stalk of stolen goods from his bedroom. Darius didn't so much as hesitate as he passed right by it, and I waited for him to disappear inside before finally moving to claim it. I shoved the lot deep into the bottom of my satchel and took off across the campus towards Air House. It was getting late, but that was all right. We needed the cover of night to move the stolen stash of goods from Darcy's room. As I hiked up the hill, that prickling sensation ran across my spine again, and I paused, certain that someone was behind me. I dropped down, pretending to retie my sneakers as I looked through a curtain of my hair back towards Ignis' house. It didn't take me long to spot Darius lurking on the track. He was vaguely trying to blend in with the shadows, but beneath the light of the full moon, his broad frame was pretty impossible to hide in the open, rocky landscape of fire territory. My heart started pounding a little as I wondered what the hell he was doing. He'd only just arrived at Ignis' house, and he seemed intent on heading inside a few moments ago. It was like he waited for me to walk away, and was now following me. A shiver of unease ran down my spine at that thought. I was confident he hadn't seen me reclaim the treasure outside, because he would have confronted me already if he'd figured out I'd stolen from him. So, he must have had some other reason to follow me, while I walked alone, in the dark, at night. I'm not going to let him spring another goddamn attack on me. Just ahead of me, the path split into two directions, one towards the orb and the other to Air House. I wasn't going to lead him in my real destination, and the open meadows of air territory weren't going to help me lose him. So, as I straightened, I turned towards the orb. I pulled my headphones out of my satchel and placed them over my ears, but I didn't actually turn on any music before I started jogging. I was tempted to sprint, wondering if the dragon asshole could keep up with my top speed, but I decided that would look suspicious. I didn't look back again as I ran, but I could feel him following me, his gaze on my body feeling almost like a physical sensation. The orb loomed ahead, and I darted straight inside. It was fairly empty, but several students were around having a late dinner or having a coffee and a slice of cake with friends. I snagged a bottle of water from the frozen ice cooler as I passed it so that I had an excuse for coming here, then crossed to the exit on the far side of the room. I glanced over my shoulder before I stepped outside and saw Darius striding through the room. I caught his gaze for a fleeting moment, then slipped out into the dark again. I sprinted to the right of the exit and into the shadow surrounding Mars Laboratories, pressing my back into the wall as soon as I reached it and ducking behind an arch in the brickwork. I looked back at the orb just as Darius stepped out and fell still. He looked around with a frown and I smirked to myself as I waited silently in the shadows. I'd given the cops and several security guards the slip more than once, and I was sure Darius Acrex wouldn't be much of a challenge. He looked left and right, swearing beneath his breath as he tried to figure out where I'd gone. "Have you seen Roxy Vega?" he snapped at a group of girls as they appeared from the direction of Jupiter Hall. "No," they replied, lingering in case he wanted anything else from them. Darius snarled irritably and headed the other way, moving closer to me as he searched the shadows. As he stalked past me and on towards the Earth Observatory, I slipped along the wall and kept going until I reached the far end of the building. The Wailing Woods spread out beyond me, but I'd have to make it across another patch and a long stretch of grass before I would reach the trees. I glanced around to see if Darius or anyone else was close enough to see me, then made a run for it, my heart pounding as I sprinted for the trees. And I passed between two huge trunks before making it into the darkness beneath them. There wasn't an official path here, but I kept running until I came to one deeper into the trees. I pulled up short on the dirt and caught my breath. I listened for the sound of pursuit. Silence greeted me, and I grinned to myself as I turned in the direction of Air House. Whatever Darius had planned for me, he was going to be disappointed. I started running again and didn't slow until I reached Air Tower. I threw a gust of air magic at the lock to let me in and jogged up the curving stairwell to Darcy's room. I hammered down the door and she opened it with wide eyes. I stepped inside without waiting for her to ask why I was here. "Has something happened?" she asked nervously, looking over me like she expected to find something had been done to me. "Not yet," I said. But Orion just turned up in Ignis' house with a bunch of FIB agents and started searching every room for evidence to do with Astrom's death. They're bound to start on the rest of the houses. And once they're done there, they'll come here. So we need to move Darius's gold like yesterday." "Oh, shit. Okay," Darius agreed. "But what the hell are we going to do with it?" "Bury it, I guess," I offered, having no other ideas. I dropped down onto my knees and started dragging the gold out from under her bed, checking the inside of the huge sports bag and making doubly sure that I hadn't missed so much as a single coin. Darcy checked it all too, and once we were certain we had every piece, we moved towards the door again. "I'll go ahead and check that no one's lurking outside," she said. "I'll send a message to your atlas if there is. If not, then follow 2 minutes behind me." "Okay." I heaved the heavy bag over my shoulders and waited as she disappeared into the hall. I counted 2 minutes and no message came through, so I slipped out after her. I tiptoed down the stairwell, careful not to jostle the bag and make a sound. When I finally reached the bottom, I found Darcy waiting for me in the shadows by the door. We headed outside and moved north towards the Wailing Wood. Trees were thick and ominous around us, their branches whispering in soft breezes overhead that sent my skin crawling with anxiety. "I vote we bury it here," I said. "We can set some kind of marker to find it again if we need to, but at least this way no one will be able to prove it had anything to do with us if it's found." "Good plan," Darcy agreed. "Look, there's a few animal tracks that lead through the trees from this path. If we follow them, they'll probably lead us to the heart of the forest." She led the way further into the trees and took the route off of the path. When she was sure we'd gone far enough, she stopped, and I dropped the heavy bag of treasure between us. "Now what?" I breathed. Our earth elemental lessons had been all about the power of growth so far. We'd created flowers and vines and even encouraged trees to grow new limbs. But we'd done nothing with the actual earth yet. I imagined we had the power to dig a hole in the soil by our feet with magic, but I wasn't really sure where to begin. "Let's just try to create a hole and see what happens," Darcy suggested. I didn't have any better ideas, so I followed her lead and aimed my hands towards the soil at her feet. I imagined a hole in my mind, the soil parting to create the perfect hiding place for our treasure. Nothing. Darcy was clenching her teeth so hard in concentration it looked like she might burst a blood vessel. I dropped to my knees and pressed my palms flat on the ground to see if that might work better instead. A faint tremor marked the path of magic flowing into the dirt around me, but no hole appeared, and without a shovel, we were really going to struggle to get this done. Shit, Darcy cursed. We could just throw it in the lake? I balked at the idea of all this pretty treasure sinking to the bottom of the lake. The sirens might find it, I reasoned, though part of me was refusing just because I couldn't bear to part with this hard-won prize so easily. Well, I guess we'd better start digging then, Darcy said, sounding resigned. I nodded in my agreement and began to claw the dirt around me. Darcy joined in and I continued to try and throw my earth magic at the task. Sometimes it seemed like the clumps of soil I broke away was bigger than I expected, and I wondered if my magic was aiding me a little, even though it was clearly not doing everything I wanted. Darcy was breathing heavily beside me, and sweat was lining my brow along the side, and the smears of mud from the ground continued. Heaven only knew what the hell I'd look like when we were done here, but I'd have to worry about that once our job was complete. The hole was still only halfway dug, and we needed to get the treasure into it. I was so engrossed with our task that I hadn't even noticed the footsteps approaching until it was too late to hide what we were doing. "Holy guacamole, your majesties!" Geraldine exclaimed, and Darcy squealed in fright. "Shit, Geraldine, don't sneak up on people like that!" I barked as my heartbeat thundered over her sudden arrival. "What in the name of Santa sunbathing in a thong are you up to?" she asked, her eyes wide and wild. I couldn't help but laugh at that. She'd caught us red-handed. We had no choice but to come clean and hope for the best. "Well, I didn't want to drag you into this, Geraldine," I said slowly, "but I think I'm going to have to trust you with our secret." Darcy shot a look at me to say, "Are you sure about this?" But I could only shrug hopefully. "The honor of keeping your secrets would be the single greatest accolade I have ever achieved," Geraldine gushed. "I will take it to the grave, and I will hold your confidence even if I was tortured on a rack, fed alive to starving rats, boiled in a vat of weak old gravy, beaten by the fists of—" "We get it, Geraldine. We can trust you," Darcy said to stop her. "What are you doing out here in the middle of the night anyway?" "Oh, I was just replenishing my magic," she explained, brandishing a basket of purple flowers at us while peering at our half-dug hole curiously. "I'm of the Cerberus order, so we have to eat aconite, which you can imagine is better as wolfsbane, to replenish our magic. I was just gathering fresh supplies of it, which is easier to do at night. It's a deadly poison to most other orders, though, so no snacking." "What are you doing?" "I'm guessing you heard about the little fire in Darius A. Crux's room?" I asked quietly, glancing around in case of more late-night wanderers were in the woods. "Well, that was kind of me." "Well, put my tail and call me Miss Whiskers," she exclaimed. "So this is his gold." "Yeah, and we need to bury it before the FIB or the teachers find out," Darcy added. "Look no further. Geraldine Bruce is a firm friend and trustworthy protector of the true heirs to the throne of Solaria. Your scandal is my scandal, your war is my war, and your enemy is my enemy. Darius A. Crux should burn in the fiery pits of the afterlife for what he did to you. And if he was on fire, if I was in my Cerberus form, I wouldn't even extinguish the flames with my urine. Please allow me to assist you with my earth magic, Your Highness." "Please do," I begged. Geraldine raised her hands, commanding her magic to do her bidding. And a deep hole sunk into the ground. She grabbed the bag of loot and threw it into the hole like it weighed less than nothing. "Wow, Geraldine, you're ripped," I commented. "Thank you," she said, flushing red in the moonlight. "I do like to dally in the pitball arena in my spare time. It would be my absolute pleasure to introduce you to the sport someday." "I'd love that," Darcy said enthusiastically. "Well, that would just be the toad's pajamas," Geraldine squealed excitedly. "Would you perhaps like to come and watch me play the next match this Sunday? Just so I know I'd knock your diamond-encrusted socks off if you did." "It's a date," I agreed. Anything to pay her back for saving our asses here. I snatched the sock from my satchel and took the coins from it before tossing them into the hole too. As I held the dagger out over the hole again, that weird presence it seemed to hold begged me not to release it, and I paused. "What are you waiting for?" Darcy hissed. My grip tightened on the blade instead of loosening. Why should I have to toss it away? I like it. It's mine now. I want to keep it. I exhaled slowly, all of my instincts warring against the insane idea of holding the dagger. I'd been in enough scrapes to know that wandering around with a stolen dagger while investigations into the whole who stole it was taking place. And that was an absolutely terrible idea. I shook my head fiercely, shrugging off the desire to keep the blade and flinging it down on top of the bag. That thing was really weird. Geraldine raised her hand before her with a huge surge of movement. The soil covered the stolen treasure and the ground flattened out above it. She encouraged a patch of pink and gold flowers to bloom over the spot, and I dropped a pin on the map of my atlas at our location so that I could find it again if necessary. X marks the spot, I joked, feeling like we were a bunch of pirates. Darcy released a breath of laughter. We all grinned at each other as we moved away from the scene of the crime, and Geraldine reached out with her magic to remove every speck of dirt from our clothes and bodies. She even managed to drag the dirt out from under my fingernails, and I marveled at her power. We kept quiet as we made it back to the path and paused within a clearing where the moonlight spilled over us. "We keep this secret among the three of us," I reiterated, just in case Geraldine got any ideas about telling the rest of the Ass Club about what we'd done. "I swear on the sanctity of our friendships that I'll never breathe a word of this to another soul," she agreed surreptitiously. I couldn't help but smile at the strange girl who had offered us her loyalty so completely. I'd found her disturbing and downright annoying at times, but I couldn't help but feel the truth in those words as she spoke them. We were friends. The kind who met up and buried secrets in the depths of the woods in the middle of the night and never told another soul about them. The kind who trusted each other's motivations and forgave their worst behaviors no matter what. "Here's to a long and beautiful friendship," I swore, holding my hand out between us. "To friendship," Darcy agreed, placing her hand on top of mine. "Friendship," Geraldine agreed, completing the pile with a sniff that announced the arrival of her tears. We smiled conspiratorially at each other one last time before parting ways and heading back to our individual houses. I hadn't expected to spend my evening bearing evidence in the middle of a forest, but it wasn't the worst way to spend a night either. I hope you guys have been enjoying my readings of Ruthless Fae. I will continue uploading those here on YouTube, but I wanted to let you know that if you're looking for a little extra romance in between these episodes, I do have a series of short stories here on YouTube called The Library of Dreams, written by moi, if you're interested. I just uploaded a romance one. It's called The Claimed, part of the Library of Dreams series. Be sure to check it out. And I will play a clip of The Claimed here shortly.
I swallowed hard, trying to hold on to my anger. It was slipping. "So what?" I forced out. "You watched me work and decided to make a political statement out of me. You claimed me in front of the entire Vampire Council. You painted a target on my back with a smile." He smiled again, slow and devastating, like he knew exactly how dangerous that grin was.
"Yes,"
he said.
"I did."
He set his glass down on a carved obsidian table and leaned closer, voice low now, nearly a whisper.
"But not just to make a point."
I stared at him, trying to read between the lines. He was a politician now, a damn good one. But this didn't feel like strategy anymore. Not fully. Moreau looked down at me, not with pity or ownership, but with a kind of ancient reverence.
"I did it because I wanted to,"
he said.
"Because I chose you. Not as a symbol, as a person. Because I know what's coming."